Hi, I'm Rahul Singh, CIO Equities at Tata Asset Management. Today, I'm not going to talk about market outlook, but something which is very, very different and something about investing in general. You might have all heard this term that investing is more art than science. And I thought I will speak on that subject and give you my perspective on the same. Have you ever wondered why certain sectors and certain stocks do much better than what their earnings justify? And have you ever wondered why the biggest returns in 2021 came through thematic trends and how well a company fitted or drove that trend? In such companies or sectors, the forward looking moving average of expectations have gotten extended much beyond the traditional 12 24 months, which reflects in the either the inflated PE ratios or in terms of certain companies trading on price to sales. And some of these examples in 2021 were in the form of power, mid-cap IT, or the new age digital companies. That is the essential nature of the markets. And 2022 will not be any different, but the themes will keep changing. Why does this happen? Apart from technical factors like under ownership, which plays a role, we can't help but see parallels with a form of art which was there in 18th and early 19th century called Impressionism, which is the predominant art form at that point of time. Impressionism, as the name suggests, depicts paintings of everyday objects and natural scenes with interplay of nature, wind, and light to capture the impression of that subject rather than the clearly defined features of that subject. In fact, Monet, the French painter who was the flag bearer of Impressionist painting and who started this movement in a way, said, "For me, a landscape does not exist in its own right, since its appearance changes at every moment, but its surroundings bring it to the life. The air and the light which vary continually, it is only the surrounding atmosphere which gives objects their real value." So you might be wondering what is the connection between Monet, Impressionism, and markets. Companies' fundamentals and cash flows are like the subjects in Impressionism, and markets are like the atmosphere, combination of wind, light, and nature, which creates an impression of the subject, which in some cases could be different from the hard reality of that subject. The subject itself is a company or a stock in question. The starting point for stocks to perform is always an improvement in its fundamentals. The surrounding atmosphere, which is the macros, the thematic swings, the interest rate, tends to enhance or depress the appearance, resulting in more than expected impact on value on both sides, positive and negative. Here are some analogies which will make it even clearer. For example, wind on the subject, or let's say wind on a tree, is like industry tailwinds which can change the impression for the company, something which maybe the metals or the IT services sectors have gone through in 2021. Wind can impart a different level of dynamism to company strategies and make a management look better than it actually is. And all of this affects valuations more than just the numbers itself. Similarly, light on the subject is like a subjective lens which sometimes changes the appearance of the company or the sector, like in the case of power utilities in 2021, which have transformed themselves into renewable thematic. As if to prove this point, Monet in fact painted a series of 30 paintings of one cathedral series in a different light conditions at different times of the day and the year, gave the same subject a distinctly different character in all these 30. These paintings, the effect of light on the subject is as important as the subject itself. And that goes back to the point I was making that sometimes the atmosphere or the market conditions create a much better impression of a company or a theme than what is just justified by the fundamentals. Of course, the fundamentals have to improve, but sometimes the impact of those fundamentals is accentuated by the atmosphere or the markets. Yeah. Similarly, nature is like a combination of broader macros impacting the equity valuations. For example, interest rates, which is very relevant today in the markets today. And this explains the wide range of valuation targets for, let's say, the presently loss-making digital companies in 2021. Longer the cash break-even, more sensitive is the valuation to the. And that kind of shows how important macro factors or the natural surroundings is to the impression of that company or valuation of that. On a lighter vein, Monet even had a quote that is very apt for what value investors have gone through in 2015-16 onwards. He said, I wished I had been born blind and then suddenly gained sight so I could have begun to paint without knowing what the objects were that I saw before me, which is what value investors have felt over the last almost 5-7 years. This analogy, therefore, between art and investment is a useful reminder that impressions change with the change in environment. A company which did not create a good impression under different circumstances, when the circumstances change or the atmosphere changes, that company or that object can look completely like we have seen in the case of Impressionism. We got glimpses of that in 2021, and 2022 will be no different. I hope you found this comparison and this analogy useful. And I really hope that when you make your investment decisions, you keep that in mind and don't get too carried away one way or the other when the environment changes or when the companies or valuations do much better than what you expect. Thank you for listening.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.